Since the ICook Foods scandal came to light in 2019, Ian Cook and his company have been in a dogged fight, desperately trying to prove their innocence. They've been battling corrupt elements within the Victorian government and the greater city of Dandenong Council, who appear to have collaborated to destroy the company. Now, just this week, the story took another troubling twist when Victoria's Department of Health and Human Services revealed in its very own health inspectors were meddling in the independent auditing of ICook Foods. The saga continues to become more and more disturbing, Ian. So, welcome.
No worries. G'day, Michael. How are you?
Good, thanks. Now, the handwritten notes and the emails have gone backwards and forwards for what was meant to be an independent audit. How did we come across those?
Okay, so those documents came via the court action itself. So what happened then, we amended we were trying to amend our statement of claim. The other side decided that they wanted to object to all of that. In doing so, they then effectively fought it and had like a mini trial in court. What the story you're referring to is the ABC apparently got hold of the transcript. They read through the transcript and the stuff you're talking about that showed the auditor had been colluding with two senior bureaucrats, being Pauline Maloney and Leanne Johnson. And we already knew that. We knew from other auditors what had gone on. This was now in open court. And so the story was exposed yesterday because it became whatever the public documents, court documents. So that's how it all got out there. The question really is, for us, is you've got Pauline Maloney. Now she audits the independent auditors and she's involved in keeping us closed. You've got Leanne Johnson, the senior head of health at Dandenong City Council. And then you've got Gavin Bucket. So these three are conspiring to engineer not only keeping us closed, but a false report about our food safety plan. Then you have to say to yourself, well, these are just senior bureaucrats. They're doing this on their own? I don't think so. I think these people are being told what to do because bureaucrats tend not to just go off on their own little frolic. They work to a set of guidelines or whatever they're told or an outcome that their bosses want. So then you have to say, what's the motivation and who has the power to do this? And I often, when I think about this, you think, well, you've got Community Chef, you've got the cover up of losing all this money and how do we do this? We certainly can't leave ICook Foods sitting there. That's got to go. As part of that cover up, now the person who put that in place was the then health minister, who was our current premier. So he's there as the premier. He has the power now to do this and to direct these things. And I think we have to start looking at that because you've got all the money that's missing from Community Chef. There's the possibility that some of it might even be theft when you actually look at it. And then the more that we peel it back and the more that we see and the more evidence that we get makes me truly believe that it goes all the way to the top.
Now, I've read the transcript and the emails that actually show that Gavin Bucket's original email said that his recommendation was that ICook Foods be able to reopen to manufacture chilled foods and give him 4 weeks to comply with any of his orders. And that was sent through to what was meant to be an independent audit. This was a draft copy, and then suddenly it changed. Am I right in that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and the other thing too, Mike, it's not even just suddenly. I mean, this guy writes his report. So he comes in and he does a normal food safety audit, spends 4 or 5 hours there going through the food safety program, walking around the facility. We explain how things happen, et cetera, et cetera. So he then writes a draft report. Now, almost every other auditor in the last 20 years that I've ever had, they come in, they do an audit, they write it up, and they give it to you then or within a few hours. Remember, it's what they've seen. That's what they're auditing. This guy It takes 3 or 4 days, but he writes one to us and basically says, yeah, look, there's some minor things I need you to change in your food safety plan. You should be able to operate and have that within a month, right? And within a month, get that done. He then goes backward and forward, which we now know, with Maloney. So by the 12th, I think, yeah, so something like he comes in the 27th of February. By the 12th of March, I mean, how long does it take to write an audit that you've done? I mean, you're in there for 3 or 4 hours. Anyway, so he rewrites this audit on the 12th. And when he rewrites it, it comes with major non-conformances. We have to stay shut. It's just exactly everything that the department wanted. Now, remember, his income, his business is reliant on his registration. He cannot offer his services to any food premises in Victoria without being on the department's list of authorised independent auditors. Well, when I say that, he can't write certificates that pass you if he's not on that list. And the person involved to make sure that that list, that the auditors on that list are doing the right thing and that they're all audited properly, is Pauline Maloney. And she's the one coming in also auditing us from the department's point of view. See, when Brad Sutton closed us, he made it a requirement that we get this audit. He wanted one. Yeah, he wanted one. Well, can you imagine if the auditor had come in and said, oh, ICook Foods is completely compliant? I mean, the food we find out was safe. The woman never ate anything of ours. And then an auditor comes in and says we're compliant. Kind of makes a mockery of what Sutton did, doesn't it?
Terrible. And again, I keep coming back to the fact that this was a 40-year successful business that had won award after award, that was at the top of its game, that was employing 40 plus local people and had done nothing wrong, and bang, gone overnight. So even without trying to assign motive or intent, just that on its own should have people, Victorians, in outrage over this, because if it can happen to you, it can happen to anyone.
So yes, you're absolutely right. If it can happen to us, it can happen to anyone, and that's what has to be stopped. I mean, you can't have it that a government gets to take out a business because for any reason, just because they want to. And the Food Act and the power of these people means that they can actually take someone out just because they don't like them. I mean, I quoted once before, it was quoted to me, and one of the founding fathers of America said, I think it was Jefferson, and he said that justice won't occur until the unaffected are as outraged as the affected. Now, as a person who's affected, of course I'm outraged about what's happened. But you look at it from your point of view, you and your listeners and other people have to be outraged that they can do this, because you just don't know when you're next, when your number is up against these people.
Exactly, Ian. So where to from here? What is the next step in this just horrific saga for you? When is the next court date? What is the next stage we're at?
So at the moment, we're waiting on a judgment from a judicial registrar. So the judicial registrar has to make a judgment on the things that were being argued about. Once that's sorted out, then we go to the next part of the directions hearing, and that should lay down a trial date. It'll lay down, things that have to be done before that trial date, like mediation, etc. And off we go. Our aim is to make sure that everybody knows what's going on all the way along. You have your quiet times where you're just doing the normal work that has to be done. But then when things like this come up, it's important to make sure that the message is out there and that everybody understands what's happening in this case for exactly the reasons that you articulated before. And that is that this could happen to anyone. And in fact, anyone in the food industry in Victoria should be very nervous.
And I'm going to ask you to look into the crystal ball and maybe expose some of your strategy here. Should the government come back with an offer and a non-disclosure or a gag order, what do you think you would say to them?
Yeah. So usually, like in all settlements, they quite often say, we don't want the settlement amount. I think the fact that anybody settles or there's a settlement out of court, everyone will know what's gone on. Our aim, though, is to expose all of this. So while I need to be mindful of anything that would help my employees, creditors and people who want a good outcome from this financially, who've suffered along with us, by the same token, we want to make sure that justice is done as well.
All right.
So, yeah. And to be honest, I can't see this government digging their heels in. I can't see them trying to settle like that. All I can see is a government that wants to or thinks that it has the power and the ability to manipulate everything from the media through the police through to the judiciary.
Especially when they're spending our money, actually your money and my money and all of our money, when they're spending it, and I would hate to see the legal bill defending this. It's fairly deep pockets considering it's not their money they're spending.
Oh yeah, well, it's always easier to have a legal battle when you have endless amounts of money and it's not yours, and there's nothing. It doesn't bother Daniel Andrews how much he spends. It's not his money. It doesn't come out of his pay packet. We have to fight it, and we have to pay ourselves. We have to pay our own way. But they get effectively a bottomless pit of other people's money, and that is the taxpayers of Victoria.
One final question, Ian. There was a recent bill tabled or proposed that would stop the Chief Health Officer being sued for decisions he's made. Do you think any of that has its need or its origin in your case?
I have absolutely no doubt that our case would have stimulated that legislation. No bureaucrat in Victoria has to fear being sued if they act in good faith. So if they do normal due diligence, act in good faith, just do their jobs properly and follow whatever legislation that they've got in front of them, the way it says, there's no one can sue them. You cannot sue someone for doing their job and acting in good faith. So that already exists. Why do you then need to make special legislation for one individual? Pandemic, no pandemic, it's completely unnecessary.
In poker, we would call that a fairly explicit tell.
Yes, that's exactly right.
All right, Ian Cook, thanks so much for your time and good luck with your battle.
No worries. Thank you, Michael. Have a great day.